For TSR, I-6 Ravenloft was a big surprise hit, and like in Hollywood, a sequel was greenlit. It would be bigger, better, with a hell of a lot more production value. The same creative team from Ravenloft would be brought back. Everything was aligned for success. Would we get a sequel that surpasses the original, like Aliens, T2, and Empire Strikes Back? Well, in short, no. I-10 Ravenloft 2, The House on Griffin Hill, was released in 1986, written by Tracy and Laura Hickman with art by Clyde Caldwell and Jeff Easley. It should have been another hit, but it wasn't, and is nowhere near as fondly remembered as its predecessor. In fact, it's hardly remembered at all, and it's just mostly been forgotten. So what happened? Well, let's take a look at the story first. Our setting is the Victorian town of Mordenshire, where an alchemist, Count Strahd von Zarovich, is engaged to Lady Virginia Weatherby. The Count constructs a device called the apparatus to expel all evil, which he does. This creates the evil version of Count Strahd, or has brought the evil Count Strahd from Barovia. The story's never really quite clear on this. The evil Count is hiding and building an army of undead who possess townsfolk in order to blend in. The heroes must explore several locations, be wary of betrayal by possessed townsfolk, and work with the alchemist Strahd to defeat his evil side. The story is much more convoluted than the first Ravenloft and plays more like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde than Dracula. Mordenshire is also more like Hound of the Baskervilles, with its foggy moors and Victorian setting, than Transylvania. A good sequel should be different but retain some of the feel of the original, and Ravenloft 2 fails to do that. It's just way too different with none of the charm of the first original adventure. And the inclusion of a good Count Strahd really waters down the character of Strahd von Zarovich and what we know of him and of his history. Next is the weird sequel aspect. Ravenloft 2 is never really clear on what it wants to be. It can be played directly after the first Ravenloft, but does not fit like a sequel should, so the writers give a way for the adventure to be played at the same time as the first one, with the DM deciding on which adventure is a dream and which is real, with wounds and trauma carrying over from one adventure to another. While a novel idea, the two complete different styles do not mesh well, and the games will feel disjointed. Ravenloft 2 is a chore for a DM to run. I'm sure there are many good dungeon masters who can pull off running Ravenloft, but 1986, when I was a young teen trying to run Ravenloft 2, was very intimidating. There is a lot, and I mean a lot of upkeep, and stuff the DM has to keep track of, and a non-veteran DM can really find themselves overwhelmed, and the task of running both adventures simultaneously is daunting. Nearly 35 years later, and the thought of running it still, in a way, scares me, and I would be prone to mess it up. This go around, the Mesmerist Pendulum replaces the fortunes of Ravenloft this time. The players will visit a hypnotist, and this will reveal the location of certain items and where evil Strahd is and what his goal is. While a cool and unique idea, it doesn't flow as smooth as the Gypsy fortune reading, and is not as innovative. This also required you to cut out cards from the gatefold cover, which people are not a fan of, destroying the product they paid for, I myself included. Now this seems like a minor issue these days, however back in 1986, making photocopies was not an easy task. Doing a lot of things was not an easy task, as it is now compared to back in 1986. So it seems I have done nothing but crap on Ravenloft 2, The House on Griffin Hill, and to a certain extent, I have. But over the years, many fans, including myself, have come to appreciate and get what Tracy and Laura Hickman were going for. And it was not a bad adventure module. In fact, it is okay, and to some, even a good one. But as a sequel, it just doesn't hold up to the original. And unfortunately, that is the way sequels are judged. It's just overly complex, requires a lot of work with an experienced DM, and loses a lot of that mood and flavor that made the original just so special. Yes, they were going for something different, but I think in this case, they were just too different. And when you want a sequel, you want it to be a little bit the same, a little bit different. Just that nice balance, that mix of a good sweet spot of balance. But in this case, Ravenloft 2 does not deliver that. So is Ravenloft 2, The House on Griffin Hill, necessary for the Ravenloft campaign setting? No. While many characters featured in Ravenloft 2 are carryover to the Ravenloft campaign setting, such as Azelin, this is where he gets his introduction, the Weatherby family, Lord Godfrey, the Dionair family, and Mordantshire itself, all these have been overhauled and updated for the Ravenloft campaign setting in several products, including the core book. In fact, the events of Ravenloft 2 are barely mentioned in the Ravenloft campaign setting, and sometimes it makes you wonder if Ravenloft 2 is even considered canon, though they do kind of acknowledge that it is. It's like the crazy uncle they lock up in the attic. Nobody talks about it, nobody deals with it. One worthy note, though, is that Heather House and the House on Griffin Hill are fully detailed in this module, and they are the only places where they can be found. So there is that. So if you wanted to do an adventure in Heather House or the House on Griffin Hill, you would need to have this module. Although there are no adventures in Ravenloft, official TSR adventures in Ravenloft campaign setting that require you to do so. I am the ancient, I am the land. Your screams still echo in your room. Cold sweat soaks the bed sheets and trickles down your back. It seemed so real. The great towers of a darksome place called Ravenloft. Its misty veils and the terrible tragedy of a man who had sold his soul to unlife. Now the sunlight streams through the window with promise of a new day. The dread nightmare at last is over. In the cold sunlight of a dying autumn, you step from your room at the inn and stroll along the friendly streets of Mordantshire. But from the back of your mind, the dream creeps forward to haunt you. Why do the faces of those who have befriended you now seem those of strangers? Why do those who called you here in terror now seem to dismiss your task as a folly? More? Why are you advised so strongly to forget about the House on Griffin Hill, the domain of the fair-haired Count von Zarovich, a name that cries out from your dark nightmare? You halt as the swirl of events grow more confusing with every passing minute. Which is the dream and which is reality?